The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stine's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, living dead and undead. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas, and I'm joined by my good buddy, Nick Shaw. We are the Goosebumps Crew, and we're back to, what else? Talk some more Goosebumps. Unfortunately, Bjorn Pelnick, our other Goosebumps buddy, was unable to join us, and I will explain why in just a second. But first, as always, I must say, if you are joining us for the first time on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, I want to sincerely welcome you all. If you are or have ever been a fan of the Goosebumps series of books or the monster franchise that they spawned, then I have a feeling that this podcast is going to be right up your alley. As I always say, me, Bjorn, and Nick are some of the biggest Goosebumps nerds on the entire planet. We can talk about Goosebumps for hours on end. That's exactly what we do here on this podcast. Every week we have a brand new episode talking about everything Goosebumps related, whether it be the books, TV shows, movies, video games, merchandise, whatever it is. If it has Goosebumps in the name, we're going to talk about it until the word Goosebumps does not sound like a real word anymore. You guys know what I'm talking about. When you hear a word so many times that it doesn't sound real. So with all that said, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the Goosebumps Crew YouTube channel. If you are just dying to get new Goosebumps Crew episodes a day before they go up on YouTube, they go up on YouTube every Wednesday. But if you just want to get those episodes before they go up, you can follow us on our audio platforms. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Audio-only versions of episodes go up every Tuesday, so that's the day before they go up on YouTube, so you can catch them over there if you just really want to hear what we're talking about in the week. And of course, you can follow the Goosebumps Crew Podcast over on social media. We are available over on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. And you can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Aussie Fan and Sean, respectively, on their social medias and their YouTubes. All of those links are in the description below, so check them out. Become a crew member today and join the Goosebumps Crew. We thank you in advance for your support. Now, before we get into the topic of the week, there's a few things we got to do in terms of, housekeeping sort of things. First off, I want to introduce our guests joining us this week. Hailing from the GooseJunkies Podcast, another Goosebumps podcast, we have Mr. Michael Lillquist, the ultimate Goosebumps man, and joining us for the very first time on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, the Horrorlander. Great to have you guys here today.
Yo, very excited to be here. Man, this is a legendary moment. Biggest crossover since the Avengers. I don't got my Black Widow spandex on. If it gets 10,000 views, I'll go change. I'll change.
No, man, this is, like I said, these guys hail from GooseJunkies, that podcast. So right over there, they do reviews of episodes of the Goosebumps TV show, alongside reviews of other horror anthology shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark, The Nightmare Room, R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour, just to name a few. They do lots of great stuff over there. So make sure you go check out their podcast. That link will be in the description as well. But we're very glad to have you both here today. As I said, Bjorn was unable to join us today, but I would be remiss if I did not follow through with his request to tell the story of why he's not here today. He is actually in the hospital. He's doing all right. Don't worry about him. But he unfortunately had a mishap overnight at the time of recording this, where apparently he was sleepwalking and stood up in his bed and apparently didn't fall. He dived into his bedside table, like full on swan dived and shit. Unfortunately, he did get some hematoma, so he is in the hospital to get that taken care of. But he's doing all right, so he'll be back with us next week. But he felt it would be give a nice chuckle to tell that story here on the podcast. So that's why he's not here tonight. We wish him well, but he'll be back next week to join us once again. And today's episode is a pretty momentous occasion. because it has officially been, oh, it has officially been 1 year since we started the Goosebumps Crew podcast. I thought this was going to make noise.
You can edit it
Yes.
in post.
Yeah.
Post-production.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Goosebumps fans of all
I
ages.
should have
it is
tested that before we
officially-
started.
Yeah, it's officially been 1 year since we started the Goosebumps Crew podcast. It's one of those things where it's crazy that it's been a year, and yet it feels like it's, been forever now. I mean, we started this podcast back in November of 2023. We were just doing this just for fun. We were just friends wanting to talk about our thoughts on Goosebumps and put it out there into the world. And we knew right after we brought on Tim Jacobus, our very first guest, in our third episode, if you can believe that, that we had something special on our hands. And we felt like we had a duty to the Goosebumps community to reach out to as many people as possible in the Goosebumps community and bring those interviews to you. Some of those are fully exclusive to our podcast, which not the humble brag, but I feel like we've kind of earned that at this point. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And on top of that, we've gotten to talk about all aspects of the Goosebumps franchise. I mean, we've gotten to talk about not just the books and TV shows, but small things like the merchandise and certain aspects of the Goosebumps franchise over the years. We did an episode on lost books and sort of like the dark age of Goosebumps. As Nick showed right there, we've done episodes talking about Goosebumps merchandise. We did an episode with Trick or Treat Studios, who just released their series of Goosebumps masks. They're now available now. You guys can get them, and you can get them on trickortreatstudios.com or through other retailers who are carrying those masks. Definitely check them out. They're awesome masks. And we've gotten to talk to so many people, cover artists, authors, people who've worked on video games, theater shows, actors, behind the scenes crew, and other like-minded Goosebumps fans, YouTubers who grew up with Goosebumps. I don't want to, go on a whole tangent, but it's all been possible because of you guys, our listeners and our watchers. Whether you watched us on YouTube, listen to us on Spotify, if you've liked, shared, commented, or even just, like I said, just watched us. Thank you so much. We appreciate the support from the Goosebumps community. I feel like our star has been rising every single day. New people coming in, whether they be hardcore Goosebumps fans who are just along for the ride with us, or people who are rediscovering Goosebumps for the first time in years. There's been people who come by and are like, I used to read these books as a kid. Thank you guys so much for unlocking these memories. So it's been because of you guys that we've been able to do this podcast, and we're so lucky to have had the opportunities that we've had. So thank you from us, the Goosebumps crew, from the bottom of our hearts, for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, rating on our audio platforms, whatever it is, or even sharing with your friends. We hope to continue to grow in the Goosebumps community and bring you many more awesome Goosebumps discussions and interviews and all sorts of stuff. So this is our special 1 year anniversary episode. So we were thinking, how are we going to celebrate this? Like, what do we talk about? And I remembered that in our first episode, if you guys are longtime viewers of ours, in our first episode, we kicked things off by talking about the, at the time, recently concluded season 1 of the Disney Plus Goosebumps reboot. Now, it's been almost a year now since, of course, since that series, the season 1 had ended, and we gave our initial thoughts at the time. And now we are on the cusp of the upcoming second season, and there's a lot of news to talk about. So we figured we might as well give our thoughts on the information that has surfaced on this new season, and make some predictions on what to expect when the series drops in January. So I guess to start off first, we've talked about it ourselves on the podcast, me and Nick. I've been a little more lukewarm on season 1 of the new reboot. There were things I liked, things I didn't like. I overall would say I'm not a fan of it. It's just not what I'm looking for in a Goosebumps reboot. Nick, on the other hand, is not a fan of this first season of the new reboot, as he's talked about many times, especially concerning one haunted mask in the show. can definitely vouch for him on that one. But Micah and Harlander, you guys are our guests here today. Tell us, what do you guys think a year after it ended of Goosebumps Season 1, the new reboot?
Well, I think it's a very massive mixed bag and kind of a mixed bag and a missed opportunity. There are some good things about it. Like, I would say I divide the episodes into like 3 different categories. Only 2 I think are genuinely great, which are Go Eat Worms and Night of the Living Dummy. Those are the only 2 episodes I genuinely like. Then you got some of the middle okay episodes like You Can't Scare Me, Say Cheese and Die. Even though most of that episode sucks, I give it a little bit higher score because at least they did good stuff with the camera, even if they barely did anything with it. But Cuckoo Clock of Doom I thought was decent, even though they ruined the story and didn't do it good. But it's still a well-made episode, so I can give it that. Welcome to Horrorland, I thought was all right. And then you had the really bad, The Haunted Mask, Reader Beware, Give Yourself Goosebumps, Night of the Living Dummy Part 2. Like, those are just some of the biggest atrocities Goosebumps has ever committed.
Wow.
And like,
that's quite
especially episode 9. Episode 9 is probably a top 5 worst things Goosebumps ever done.
Mm-hmm.
So
I will say that is the worst. I would say that's the worst episode of the show. Haunted Mask is a very close second on that one, but I'll agree with you on that because Night of the Living Dummy 2 was just like, what is the point of this? Like, you call it Night of the Living Dummy 2 and Slappy only appears at the very fucking end of the episode. Like, what was the point of this? So I'll give you that one, definitely.
I only got one thing to say, people. I told you so. I said it from the trailer, man. No, but the season did have good things. I am one to call out things for how I think they are. And Go Eat Worms, like Micah said, it was good. They did a good job with it. Some other aspects of it were pretty cool, but there was just a lot of doggy doo-doo, man. I mean, septic tank scum. It was just some bad humor in there. I think they did a giant misdirection with like the first episode where you got all this adult humor, you got underage kids drinking. It just didn't feel like Goosebumps. It felt more like a Riverdale wannabe, a Stranger Things wannabe. And why would you want to be that when we already got the original Stranger Things in Riverdale? So there was definitely a lot of missteps there. And I'm not going to lie to you, going into this second season, it's kind of like the time that I caught my girl cheating on me with the local pie shop owner. I can't look at rhubarb the same way. Doesn't matter how good it tastes. Doesn't matter how good it looks. But so far, I do like what they're doing with season 2 compared to season 1. So let's just say right now, it's all good food and no leftover lingerie. So yeah, I'm pretty optimistic.
Well, and that's a good outlook to have. Me, myself, when we first got our announcement of season 2, I was a little skeptical. I know Nick and Bjorn were very skeptical. In fact, the news was not that happy to them. But I feel like, for reasons that we'll get into, there is reasons to be optimistic about this second season. I feel like, if anything, from the outcomes of season 1, that it was a chance to learn from mistakes made, and I'm hoping that they did take some things away from how that season turned out. And even though we certainly have our negative opinions on season 1, apparently from at least certain news sources, we're in a bit of a minority on that. According to Screen Rant, on their article on the show, it says, quote, while the 2023 Goosebumps reboot wasn't an instant ratings topper success for Disney, it has received generally favorable reviews and has gone over well both with fans of R.L. Stine's books and the general Disney Plus and Hulu subscriber base. The cast of relative newcomers playing Lucas, James, Isabella, Isaiah, and Margot have won over audiences, and questions around Goosebumps Season 2 are already being asked of and answered by the creative team behind Disney's reboot. So
now, how big do you think the paycheck was to write that article? I'm guessing
I that's exactly what I just said. Yep. that article was bought.
Yeah. Well, who knows? And honestly, I've seen many people say that they have enjoyed season 1. And look, if you look, we talk about what we talk about. If you at home enjoyed season 1 of the Goosebumps reboot, that's totally fine.
Go see a psych doctor.
No. It is. These are just our opinions. If you like the first season, That's totally fine. Not everybody's gonna like or dislike the exact same things. This is all our opinion. We just unfortunately walked away from that first season not necessarily satisfied with the results.
That's what they say. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what,
As
though?
our good buddy Cody Leach always says, yes.
You know what, though? Although there is negative criticism of this show, I guess one reason that fans should be thankful of the negative criticism is look at the direction that the new season is taking with the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of you guys are favoring this direction more. So actually, I would say that negative criticism is getting you better results. So actually, it's not that much of a negative. It's actually a positive.
Yep. Well, it's always a chance to, as I said, learn from the mistakes of the past and make improvements on them for the future. And, sometimes TV shows are like that. The first season is kind of a experimental base to test ideas out and see what sticks. And then going forward, you build on what works and get rid of what doesn't. A good example for me is
Fargo.
Well, a good example for me is looking back. I'm a big Simpsons fan. Look at season 1 of The Simpsons. How often do you hear people talk fondly about that? Like that first season is leaps and bounds different from everything that came after, because they took what worked and they got rid of what didn't. So it's just how TV shows are sometimes. And
if you want a modern one too, look at the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer. Remember the backlash over that? And they and they changed it up.
That was backlash before the movie even came out.
I know
Sonic looked like an abomination.
It's like, I know there's people who say that was a corporate thing, but like, there's no way there was no way that was a marketing scheme. That was they're just trying to save their asses for how bad that was.
You know what? Everybody loves the movies now, so it took a good direction from listening to fans. So there you go.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I am going to be there night 1 for the 3rd movie, bar none.
Oh, yeah. Keanu Reeves, The Shadow. Come on, man, we're all there.
Oh yeah,
front row.
Yeah.
And in terms of the first season of Goosebumps, I also heard that a lot of people were disappointed that the series, I keep saying series, the season ended. I can't say series now because there's more than one season. That the season ended on a cliffhanger, which, number one, I personally think that is like the most Goosebumps thing you can do, is to end it all on a cliffhanger. That's how like 95% of the Goosebumps books end to begin with. A lot of them don't have sequels. Mm-hmm. They end on the cliffhanger. That's the whole point of Goosebumps. But also very recently, there was a new book adaptation of the season 1 of the new show that did come out back in October. It's a full novelization of season 1 with added context for what happens afterwards. So if you really want to know what happens at the end of season 1, you can go pick up Goosebumps: The Haunting Returns.
Spoiler alert, the ending is ass.
Yeah, I don't think you guys are going to be very pleased.
If you also want to experience, if you want to experience humping my way to victory in text format, go pick up that book, people.
Yeah, that was something that happened. that happened, and we let it happen. Don't forget that. But season 1, came and went, and some people still don't even know that a season 1 exists. But now we have season 2, and starting things off, we had the initial announcement for season 2. This happened back in February of this year, of 2024. So this announcement came relatively soon after season 1 ended. So I don't know if it was in debate to see how the show would go. If then they were going to decide to do a second season, but we got our official announcement in February that a season 2 was officially in production. And for all intents and purposes, season 1 was a success. It did perform well in streaming numbers. It had if I remember correctly, it had really good opening night numbers when the first 5 episodes dropped. So it was popular. Whether or not you liked it, it was popular enough to at least warrant that second season. Though, as we soon found out, they were going to be making drastic changes from the approach of season 1 going into season 2. The biggest one of all was that they were saying it was going to be an anthology rather than a continuing story. For those unaware, season 1 was essentially one long continuous story that took bits and elements from popular Goosebumps stories and sort of sprinkled them in each episode. So, for example, in episode 1 was called Say Cheese and Die. And while, yes, there is a subplot, mind you, a subplot with a cursed camera that predicts the future, it is not the main plot of the episode. It's setting up the sort of story with Harold Biddle, a ghost who is tormenting this group of high schoolers because of what their parents did to him many, many years ago, essentially resulted in his...
Reminds me of Halloween Ends.
A little bit.
Or Nightmare on Elm Street.
A little bit, yeah, in a way. And so Harold Biddle gets his revenge, and a lot of the items that play into the Goosebumps adaptations, so to speak, are all connected to this overarching story. I know that was one of our big complaints, is that the overarching story, which was not adapting from any Goosebumps story, sort of overtook the actual Goosebumps in the Goosebumps show. And it also kind of botched the adaptations. Again, The Haunted Mask was very, very different and not in a good way.
Boom.
But at the same time, Go Eat Worms was also very, very different, and that was actually in a good way. Surprisingly, the show managed to take one of the worst Goosebumps books and make it the best episode of the show. So
I don't know. I kind of miss the phallus puppet from the 90s show. It had a certain charm.
A certain charm, you say. You say.
I'll let them adapt Chicken any day. Go ahead, give me a kaiju chicken.
Yeah, please, please. God forbid, please do something.
I still think that'd be the most terrifying episode to see.
God, I will
My
take a
Harry's
full
Adventure.
season where the entire story is chicken. I will take a 15 episode season.
Oh, hey, someone mute him real quick. Don't give him any ideas.
Oh, yeah. If you take that idea, Sony, I want my royalties. I'm just letting you know. I will
He
sue.
needs the actual party ornament that makes noise. Pay him up with that first.
Yeah. You need this. So,
Silent party.
So yes, going into season 2, they said there was going to be an anthology, but
Which
also
I don't
not
see from that trailer. I don't see that in the trailer. It looks exactly like
that's
season
the
1
thing.
did. A
There's a
continuing
caveat.
story, same cast, in different episodes.
They said it was going to be
Supposedly
an
an
anthology, but they said there was still going to be an overarching story. So I don't know how exactly that works.
How does that
I guess
work?
I can.
That's
I
not
can
what an
give some
anthology
idea.
is.
Yeah,
So
It's an American Horror Story route.
Yeah,
Or every season's going to be anthological.
Yeah, what they meant by anthology was that so people were expecting that Isaiah and all those guys were going to come back, but apparently their plan is that if we get future seasons, every season is a different story, different characters. So like Micah brought up American Horror Story, in different seasons it's different stories, but that whole season is one overarching story.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people were thinking, though, that it was going to be like the original 90s show, where it was going to be every episode is different.
Anthology episodes.
Exactly.
We
And
expected,
while that would have been
yeah.
great, that's not what we're getting still. So this new
Apparently
season
so.
was said they're going to have completely new cast, new characters, new setting, all sorts of everything was going to be new. There was not going to be any takeaways from season 1. Everything was essentially starting from scratch. And while it sucks that everything's not going to be like in anthological stories or every episode, I do like that they're going a different direction. I think it is a chance to maybe do something a little more true in nature to the Goosebumps series, because I feel like if they continued the same story, you have those problems still hanging over it for the rest of the show. So it was probably a good decision on their part. And we got a bunch of news leading up. We got news that they had a new cast, including David Schwimmer in a leading role, which was honestly surprising, more surprising than Justin Long, to be honest, in the first season.
Yeah, Justin Long wasn't a surprise. I mean, Justin Long is very well known to do horror stuff. So I was okay with that. I love Justin Long, and he was one of the best parts of that first season. His portrayal of his character was really, really well done. But Dave Schwimmer, though, that was a weird one. But he's played a doctor before, so I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's fitting. It's very fitting. So a lot of just like season 1, a lot of news about Goosebumps season 2 was relegated to sort of hearsay in news sources. So we had news about the cast, but we really had no idea about what to expect in terms of story, in terms of who the characters would be, and more importantly, what books would they be adapting for this season? In season 1, they had very, very popular stories: Say Cheese and Die, The Haunted Mask, Night of the Living Dummy, Go Eat Worms, and Cuckoo Clock of Doom. I'll be honest, when I heard that those 2 were going to be on the ballot for that season, I was like, huh, okay, neat. So, but this season we had no idea because they were keeping everything in complete secrecy. And then the first official piece that we got for season 2 came pretty unexpected. So this was the first piece of promotional anything that we got for Goosebumps season 2. This was a production image that I believe was leaked by mistake from production designer Brett Tasner. I actually did a reel after this discovery was made, and it's funny because after this broke out, a few days later we found out that I think it was taken down, or it was edited, or they put a big watermark over it because I don't think it was supposed to come out. But this was the first look we got at season 2, and this sparked a ton of discussion right off the bat. And you can definitely see why. So right here we have sort of like a city backdrop, which is already different from season 1 because season 1 was a little more of a sort of a lakeside small town, where here this looks like it's a big metropolis city, which is a very different setting. Then we have a very large tree here that's right in focus, and probably obviously the most eye-catching thing is that egg right there. So, it was very apparent that plants and eggs were going to have something to do with this season. What was your guys' first reaction when you saw this image pop up?
I think I went particularly crazy because Invasion of the Body Squeezers Part 1 and 2 got reprints, modern reprints. So initially the first thing that went through my head is like, all right, we got Egg Monsters here. We got Invasion of the Body Squeezer getting a reprint. So I'm like, oh, it's going to be an alien-themed season. So I remember everybody was going crazy. Like, oh, yeah, we're going to go alien. We're going to go sci-fi. And then now that we have the actual roster of books that are being adapted, I can see why they went back and edited out some things from the leak, because I think people might have got the wrong impression so far.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I definitely thought of too, because this definitely gives off sort of alien vibes, especially with the egg. And something that a lot of people pointed out too is that the egg almost looks like it has like the veins are forming to look almost like leaves. So it looked like it was definitely tying in with Stay Out of the Basement. One thing I will say is that Stay Out of the Basement was effectively confirmed before there was any like official confirmation on it. When David Schwimmer was announced to be joining the cast, it was said that he was going to be playing a botanist. So many people were putting pieces together and being like, botanist, it's going to be Stay Out of the Basement. So,
and there was like a leaked crew shirt that came out.
It was like, sorry, I have plants tonight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Something like that. So
another thing too is that, so I think that they're filming in New York City. So you got this downtown city. And recently there was Quiet Place Day 1 that came out, and that takes place in New York City. And of course, that's an Invasion of the Aliens thing. And I mean, minor spoiler, in that movie, there is a scene with them like building a nest. So what my thought was, okay, if Invasion of the Body Squeezer is getting reprints, maybe it's going to be like a whole alien trying to, put their eggs on Earth. These kids are going to get caught up in it. So a lot of the, I guess, factors were just leading towards that. Now, again, we don't know what the end result is going to be of this season, but I definitely think that the theories were going wild. People were going crazy. cover this
Mhm.
stuff for sure.
Yeah, I remember. I remember we were one of the first people to report on this over social media, and this just like exploded. Like everybody, within a few hours, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was going crazy with theories on what this could possibly mean, if this had confirmed books that were going to be in season. And I'm glad you brought up that there was the implications of a possible alien theme, because not only was that what I was thinking too, I was excited because I was like, I really like that idea. And there are many books that you could bring together to make that sort of theme. And yeah, there were many reprints coming up down the pipeline that were sort of making that seem all the more possible. Things are shaping out a little differently, and we'll get to that when we talk about the upcoming slate of books for this season. But it was hard to shake that feeling that that's where it was going when this image dropped. But this was the very first piece that
Sadly,
we
it's
had.
not chicken.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunately that egg did
disappointing.
not confirm chicken. So that was incredibly
That was super
disappointing. Already killed my hype like within the first 10 seconds. So that was a
See, if they would have said it was chicken, I'd have been all on board for this whole new season. I'd be the one shouting it from the rooftops.
Yeah, the chicken copy I had under my pillow every night, it went to waste.
Yep.
The chicken fairy did not come by.
It withered away. But that was our first piece that we had from season 2.
My dreams.
So speculation was ramping up right then and there. And it wouldn't be too much longer before we got our first official look at a trailer and an official plot synopsis, mostly due to New York Comic Con and the panel that they did there. And we got the official plot synopses, which came out. So first off, we got an official name for this season, which we did not get in season 1. When season 1 was first on the horizon, there were leaks implicating it was going to be called Goosebumps Resurrection. There was a leaked poster that was the exact same as the one that everyone knows, but it said Goosebumps Resurrection, but when the official one dropped, it was just Goosebumps. This season is different. There's actually a subtitle to it. This season is called Goosebumps The Vanishing. No idea how that title plays into everything, but
Body
Goosebumps
snatchers.
The Vanishing. So
People vanishing.
yeah, you would think by that
I know
name
the
it
one.
would be a Let's Get Invisible adaptation rather than a Stay Out of the Basement one, but nope. So,
Well, when
Goosebumps-
you're going sci-fi,
yeah,
abductions, anal probes, I expect to see all this.
yep, in great detail.
He really wanted to emphasize that anal probe part. He was waiting for
Yep.
that. He was
Yeah.
ready.
You could hear
That's a break.
you could
That's a
hear
big break right there.
you could hear the p when he said probe. He was just like probe.
Hey, yeah,
That's how into it he was.
Very input.
So Goosebumps The Vanishing apparently follows two twins, Cece and Devin Brewer, as they are sent to spend the summer in Gravesend, Brooklyn with their divorced dad, Anthony. A threat is stirring, and they quickly realize that dark secrets are among them, triggering a chain of events that unravel a profound mystery. The 8-episode season features Schwimmer as Anthony Brewer, a former botany professor who has immersed himself in science and mystery. After his brother went missing with a group of kids in 1994, who local teens believe were killed by ghosts, Anthony looks into evidence from the scene, which infects him with a mysterious symbiotic organism. Meanwhile, more kids go missing, and it's up to Cece and Devin to stop whatever has taken over their father. So,
Now, I was going to say a cool little factoid about what you just said, because I don't know if you'll cover this. This is pretty obscure. So Gravesend, which is the name of the town, R.L. Stine actually recently released a young adult horror book, which is kind of like if you took Are You Afraid of the Dark's Midnight Society and mixed it with Fear Street. And the title of the book is called Gravesend. So I don't know if Stine had given this prototype title to them ahead of time, or maybe it was like a post thing, but that's pretty cool trivia there.
it's possible. And actually, one thing I forgot to mention is that even though Goosebumps The Vanishing is the official name of this season, it was rumored that it was actually going to be called Goosebumps Gravesend. There was a leaked set photo of a director's chair that had Goosebumps Gravesend on the back. So it's very possible that it also could have been the name of the season, but it might have gone through like a haunted Halloween thing where it was named one thing and then got renamed at the last minute, but we'll never know. But going off of that plot synopsis, you can definitely see that there is a heavy influence on Stay Out of the Basement. The main characters are part of the Brewer family, which is the same as in the Stay Out of the Basement book, albeit different names for the characters. Instead of Margaret and Casey as the kids, it's Cece and Devin. And I don't remember exactly what Dr. Brewer's first name was in the book.
I don't think it's ever given.
I don't think so. I think there is one that was canonical but was not said in the book.
I thought it was.
But going off of that plot synopsis, there's going to be a heavy influence on one book instead of a completely original plot device, I would essentially say. But there also are some similarities to season one, mainly in the sort of conspiracy around a group of kids in the past. That was one thing I just couldn't shake off when they first announced this plot synopsis. It just seemed like while they were going in a certain direction, they were still kind of holding on to something that they just couldn't shake that they did in season one. What were your guys' thoughts on this plot for the season?
I think
Just to interject real quick, supposedly it is Michael Brewer.
Michael Brewer. That sounds correct to me, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Micah, why don't you start?
I think this season actually sounds more interesting than the first season, just because season one, the plot just felt like, as I mentioned before, the whole Harold Biddle thing is basically just a ripoff of Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, a person burns alive after some parents kill him, comes back later as a ghost and gets revenge on the parents as kids, like as a burned ghost, no less.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was very much. But this season's synopsis, while it does have some of those similar past aspects, it seems more interesting, and the plot overall feels more like a Goosebumps plot to me. You know, the idea of focusing the main story around Stay Out of the Basement was a much better idea than season one, because season one didn't really. I guess you could argue Night of the Living Dummy, but like it barely had anything to do with that. But like, I think season two, like focusing it mainly around Stay Out of the Basement, weaving other books into that, as well as adding another little mystery part to kind of almost like kick off all of the events that happen in this season, I think is an interesting idea. I'm curious how they're going to do it, because in later articles it confirmed that these kids in the 90s went missing in a military bunker. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play into the season. And I'm guessing that whatever this like whatever symbiotic thing that it describes that infects Dr. Brewer, and probably like the plants and all the other things that are going to come to life in this season, was probably tied to that military bunker, is my guess. So
yes, I agree. Parlaner?
I think before we got the official synopsis, there was like word of the mouth stuff going on about like the storyline having kids going missing, and we're going to have brother and sisters being the main characters. And when I heard kids going missing, I think the first alarm bells that went off was like, oh my God, haunted school. Like if they have a school there, could get haunted school, kids go missing. And when I saw the official synopsis, I think that although it is playing off of the first season with the whole something happens in the past that comes back to haunt kids, I think it's a lot more creepy for it being kids going missing at this military bunker compared to like the whole first season was like some like I know what you did last summer. Like everybody's hush mouth trying to hide this thing in the past. They know what they did was wrong. That makes it more into the teen drama stuff. While compared to like what Micah brought up, you have kids flat out vanish. That's more horror. That's more creepy. That's more eerie. And that's more aligned with something like Goosebumps. And Micah brought up a good point, which is that, and I'm going to throw a pun out there, this entire season is rooted, clap it up people, rooted in Stay Out of the Basement, because the problem with the first season is they had no direction. I mean, they had zero direction in the first season because they got these 5 different books. They don't know how they're going to tie it together. So, oh my God, all of a sudden, randomly, they end up in this one basement in the crib and it turns into a plot. Here you have a central focused story. Everything is surrounded around Stay Out of the Basement. It plays off Stay Out of the Basement. So you can do a lot better stuff with the story. And I think that when we cover the trailer, if you guys have seen the trailer, you will see that Stay Out of the Basement is the shining star of the season. So from the synopsis, I'd say it's a good start. It's definitely a good foundation for what we get next.
I agree. What about you, Nick? What did you think?
Again, we've been burned with that whole first season, but prior to it coming out. So I want to take everything with a grain of salt. But I will say that at least the synopsis and the fact that they are using, somewhat at least one story as a focal point, an actual Goosebumps story, mind you, not just a whole new made up story with sprinkled bits of Goosebumps items, not even really Goosebumps items along the way. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I'm still hesitant because of what they did with the first season's previews and titles and everything like that with clickbaiting us. But I mean, honestly, I think it looks pretty good. I mean, a lot of people are saying like the whole David Schwimmer, I guess you could say like a teaser poster with him and the symbiote like looks more Venom like, which I mean, I see that. I do, but maybe that'll change, or maybe that has something to do with another story. Maybe that's something, I don't know. Maybe that's something from Invasion they'll change up, or egg monsters or whatever. This is all sci-fi season, which is actually really interesting. I mean, Goosebumps is mostly known to be just kids horror, which a lot of times is just, like a haunted mask or a camera, but to actually have a whole season revolve around sci-fi stories is kind of a neat idea.
And I agree.
I was going to say that symbiote marketing was also a little bit strange too, because like now that we have the trailer, the symbiote from the trailer is like a very small, like one frame scene compared to all the promotional images where it's like a big focal point. I remember when the con was going on and before they revealed the trailer, like me and, unfortunately Goosebumps completions couldn't make it, but me and him were basically like ranting, like, oh my God, Sony's taking it. Sony's trying to do a pseudo Venom thing. It's just played out. And then you get the trailer and all of us were shocked because it's like, there's no Venom. It's just flat out stay out of the basement. So I don't know who made that marketing decision off the symbiote. I'm sure in the actual plot, it's going to mean something, but I mean, it's a good mislead. I was definitely more hyped than I was just from the promotional image.
Definitely, and going into the trailer, which we'll get to in a second, it was something that I was just like, how are you going to? Okay, so you have one book that's going to be tying everything together. That's already a good start right there. But at the same time, you still fall into the trap of how do you tie all these different things? Because at the end of the day, most of these books don't always gel well together. You can't always just throw everything into one stew and think that you're going to get something good. So it was just sort of like a cautiously optimistic thing where I'm like, I like where this is going, but I got to remember that it's possible for them to mess it up. So that was one thing going into it. When we saw the first teaser trailer, which came out before the New York Comic-Con panel, it did seem a little odd because, like you said, it was sort of like a Venom-like thing, and I'm like, what does this play into? Like, is this egg monsters? Are they doing like a monster blood thing? Like, it was just kind of like, what is this supposed to mean? And you're right. Like it really didn't rear in the trailer. So I don't know if that was just a marketing thing or if it's just something that they've yet to really elaborate on. But that was one thing I was going into it. But I do really like, again, that they're going for more of a sci-fi route with this season. Because number one, it does something a little different from season one. So you can at least differentiate it. And so it doesn't seem like it's just more of the same. If you're going to do an anthological season, like at least make it different from the last one. So you're just not like, well, why didn't they just continue it with the same characters?
It's also really smart to do sci-fi right now, too, just because of all the hype we have with sci-fi. Because like VHS Beyond just dropped, and VHS Beyond they took a sci-fi route. You, of course, had Quiet Place, sci-fi route. So if you wanted a storyline to build up the hype, this is a good choice.
Mm-hmm. And Goosebumps has some good science fiction like books like that. Books that have never gotten either haven't gotten a lot of on-screen adaptations or never got them at all. So it's a great concept for a Goosebumps show, something new, something fresh, and I don't know. I just, when I was seeing that first image and saw the plot synopsis and how heavily it was leaning on stay out of the basement, I gotta be honest, I was starting to get excited again. So then we got,
which is why it was weird they threw a curveball with Camp Nightmare. But I mean, I realize the ending, they are aliens, but I'm like, at least the other ones you could say like the whole time, like egg monsters and invasion.
I will
it's
say,
like, okay, well,
I called it.
Aliens,
I called it because, as I said, I made a reel not too far after that first image dropped, and I was like, I think Welcome to Camp Nightmare is going to be in the season, and I got a few people being like, "What? No way!" I'm like, "It's like just you watch," and I was right. I was freaking right. Now, granted, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to play into it. Again, don't know how all these are going to play into it. There's a few that will, when we get to talking about the trailer, we'll be able to talk about a little more in depth. But
unless we see like,
I just want to say,
unless we see like, say the end of that episode back in the 90s when they were like, oh, that's Earth and blah, blah. Those aliens come to help us with, say, the symbiote Dr. Brewer or something, there's ways I guess you could tie in.
Maybe there's multiple aliens. Maybe there's multiple different aliens that are coming down to Earth and they all clash or something. Some of them are good, some of them are evil. Like that would be
that one Jimmy Neutron episode where all that aliens came and abducted everybody. That's what it's gonna be. A giant alien.
Yeah, or the Jimmy Neutron movie where they take all the parents away. That would be funny. But
that would be the Vanishing.
Then we got to October, and by that point, we had leaked images and an official plot synopsis and a teaser trailer. Then we got to October and New York Comic-Con 2024. Obviously, New York Comic-Con is a big deal every single year. Maybe not as big a deal as San Diego Comic-Con, but it's very, very close. It seems like it's growing more and more and more in popularity every year from what I've seen. But Goosebumps had a pretty decently large presence at New York Comic Con. It was advertising it was going to have a big panel talking about both the TV show and giving some sneak peeks at the new season. They've done this before, but it's never been before the season drop. They've done it afterwards. I remember with season 1, they had a panel after the first few episodes dropped, and it was more talking about the adaptation process. According to Will Harrigan at Cosmic Book News, the cast and creative team of Goosebumps The Vanishing made a thrilling appearance at New York Comic Con 2024, where they unveiled the official trailer for the upcoming chapter of the Goosebumps anthology series. David Schwimmer, along with cast members Anna Ortiz, Jaden Bartels, Sam McCarthy, Elijah M. Cooper, Galia La Salvia, Francesca Noel, and Stoney Blyden were joined by executive producers and showrunners Hillary Winston and Rob Letterman to discuss the spine-tingling mysteries ahead. The panel, moderated by TV Guide's Damian Holbrook, featured exclusive sneak peeks and behind-the-scenes insights from the cast and creators. Fans in attendance were treated to never-before-seen
TV Guide is still a thing.
Building anticipation for the series premiere on Disney Plus and Hulu on January 10th, 2025. So that was when basically everything was unveiled about the new season. Any sort of mystery behind what was going to be in the season was effectively confirmed or deconfirmed. So that's where they announced the new trailer. They showed it off. And for those of you who have not seen it, let's show the trailer right here.
Hey guys.
Hey, Dad.
I want you to have a really fun and also safe summer out here. I only have one rule. Stay out of the basement.
What do you got in the basement? Did you guys know that Devin and Cece's uncle was one of the kids that went missing in 1994?
I can't get you out of my... We finally processed the request.
Only took you 30 years.
What is that?
My brother's clothes from the night he died.
Can't get you out of my head.
They were killed by ghosts.
No, nobody knows what happened.
Yo, check this out.
the hell is this? Dad! Not a good time, Kevin! Holy crap! There's something in my arm! Hey, what kind of plant should you always watch out for? An ambush.
What's going on with that?
I don't know.
Trey, your car, it's in my driveway again. Trespassing.
Yo, what are you doing? Are you out of your mind?
It's a distinct possibility.
Oh, that's not good.
Things have been happening that are not normal.
Trey's missing.
Kid's missing. Sound familiar?
Dad's behind all the crazy stuff happening.
We don't know for sure that he is.
I'm not controlling the car!
I don't know if I want to be down here.
You don't have a kid in your basement, do you?
No, that would be... No. Are you okay? Who knows how kids get these ideas? Too many horror shows on TV, I say.
So the trailer was basically the first look at everything. We got to see the first official clips of David Schwimmer in his role as Dr. Brewer. We got to see a little bit of the two main characters, Cece and Devin, and a little bit of some of the supporting characters. But more importantly, we got to see how they were executing Stay Out of the Basement and little glimpses at some of the other stories that were being shown off. And this was when we got confirmation on what stories were going to be adapted. So among the stories being adapted for the season, we of course have Stay Out of the Basement. Among them, we have Monster Blood, The Haunted Car, Welcome to Camp Nightmare, The Girl Who Cried Monster, and The Ghost Next Door. So a pretty interesting lineup of books, even more so some choices are a little more so confusing than even season one. Going into season two, as we've discussed, we thought this was going to have a very heavy sci-fi theme. And as I've even said in my previously mentioned reel, I had predicted that not only were Stay Out of the Basement, Girl Who Cried Monster, and Welcome to Camp Nightmare going to be adapted, but they were also going to adapt Invasion of the Body Squeezers, Egg Monsters from Mars, and The Blob That Ate Everyone. And this was going off the upcoming slate of reprints, most of which have since released already. So it was a little disappointing that some of those did not make the list, especially Egg Monsters, because definitely going off of that photo, you could have sworn that Egg Monsters was going to be on the menu for this season, and it seems like it is not. Maybe they're holding it out. Maybe they're holding out on us. We don't know. But from what they mentioned, it is not among the slate. So it seems like we're going into more ghost territory again. We have Ghost Next Door and The Haunted Car. We have Monster Blood making an appearance, which I shouldn't say I'm too surprised about. And then we have Girl Cried Monster and Welcome to Camp Nightmare, which I had predicted. So what do you guys, what would you guys say is probably the most surprising pick out of those six?
I think
for me, you can go.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. For me, it was probably Ghost Next Door, just because I feel like it definitely feels the most out of place. I'm excited because it's one of my favorite books. We'll see how they adapt it, but I have my theories, and I'll share that later on once we get to the theory section of this. But that's definitely the one I was the most shocked by, just because I feel like it just feels the most out of place within that lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It was the one that, out of all those, surprisingly, that was the one where I'm like, that you're adapting that for this season? Like, I didn't get that off of off of what you guys were selling so far, but all right. What about you, Harlan?
I would have thrown that in maybe that first season. That would have made more sense given it was more of a
true
past and ghost story type scenario.
Supernatural.
For this one, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
My biggest one was easily because of course, we all had it. I had the preconceived notion, all right, we're going to get Invasion of the Body Squeezers, we're going to get Egg Monsters, and I see the Haunted Car, and I was like, wait a minute. And then you see the Haunted Car in the trailer, and I'm like, how is this going to play into the story. Now, I came up, like, I guess the only thing I came up with was maybe the ghost next door, whoever is that version of Hannah or whoever it might be, maybe that's the one possessing the car, or maybe the symbiote has the ability to give anything sentience, so maybe if it enters a car, it does it. I don't know. But I remember I saw the haunted car and I was like, out of all books, that is probably one of the last ones I would have expected to be on the roster. And I think even when me and Isaiah were talking on Discord, I think I even told you, I was like, there's no way that this book that Bloody Disgusting's article was saying is going to be adapted. And then I saw the trailer and I was like, oh my God, it's actually those books.
Yeah. It's a very interesting set of books to throw together into a big stew. And I don't know. I'm optimistic. But I'm very curious to see how they mash these all together. And more importantly, if it's going to be done well. But most importantly, we got to see how they were going about doing Stay Out of the Basement. So, of course, as we said, you have the two main characters, the two kids, Cece and Devin, and then you have David Schwimmer as Dr. Brewer. I already like David Schwimmer in this role. I think he's just the way he naturally acts, I think, as an actor, I think is very fit for the sort of character he's doing. Sort of mysterious, a little awkward, but he's also kind of got a little bit of sinister tone to him. Especially when he starts acting a little more like a little meaner, a little more, rage filled. And it does really lean into sort of like the body horror of Stay Out of the Basement. It seems like, from what I've seen in the trailer, it looks like there's spores, and that's what's connected to the plants. It's not as much of like sort of the gooey symbiote, like venom sort of thing, at least from what I've seen. It's more of like spores that he kind of inhales, and that starts like taking over him, essentially. But then you have stuff with the plants, and then the one scene from the trailer, which every single trailer reaction I've seen just winces at, with the worms coming out of his hand and he's like pulling him out. I gotta tell you, something about this show I will give them props for. They do body horror really well. Like, the body horror is top notch in my opinion. So I'll give them that. But it really does seem like they're trying their best to stay true to the sort of campy nature of Goosebumps, with the sort of like goofiness of it all, like just the plants taking over and that sort of thing, but making it legitimately scary. Like, I'm all for a Goosebumps show that goes into the scares. Like, really try to like make it a little more creepy, and I think that's what they're going for here. But what do you guys think about
maybe that's what they'll do with Monster Blood. Maybe it's a crossover. Maybe that's what mutates the plants.
It's possible. There is a scene in the trailer where there's like this sludge that's coming out of like a sink. It's not completely black, so I don't know if it's the same thing from the teaser trailer, but I'm wondering if that is related to the Monster Blood at all. And again, like, how are they going to change things up to make it different? Is it going to be like the book? I don't think it's going to be exactly like the book, but
like I said, I don't mind them taking certain liberties. You know, what if the Monster Blood is, since they're using Girl Cried Monster, say if it's Mortman's blood, you know, that's Monster Blood or whatever. You know, there's ways they could tie things in to make them, I guess, with these certain other books, but when you do that, I feel it loses the general heart of that particular book and story, though.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I'm intrigued to see how this goes, but the trailer, like, it looked good, but it worries me a little bit just because I think that's maybe what we're going to get, is just we're going to dab a little bit of this into this and dab a little in this. Just sprinkle these other stories into the main story of Stay Out of the Basement, trying to weave them in somehow. I don't know. We'll see, though. I mean, like, that's why I'm trying to get like super hyped right now because like I love the books they chose, with the exception, like I said, I'm very, very much with Horrorlander on this one. I don't know why the fuck the haunted car is in here. That is so weird. Ghost Next Door is weird too, but the haunted car really takes that one for me. I don't know why that story was chosen for this season.
Well, you know what? If you're gonna delve into Series 2000, like I feel like there's many other books besides Haunted Car that you could have taken from. Again, Invasion of Body
sci-fi.
You're going for sci-fi. You're possibly messing with alien shit, and you overlook like probably the Goosebumps, one of the best Goosebumps alien books. Well, I wouldn't say best Goosebumps alien books.
You also got Brain Juice and Earth Geeks Must Go. Those are also
Earth Geeks Must Go.
Yeah, and Egg Monsters from Mars. That's what we already.
Let's be honest here, though. I think Rob Letterman has a specific liking to different books, and he kind of chooses them based on that because Haunted Car had a very big impact in the movie too. So
that is very true.
And I swear, if we see that damn dog. What was it? What's her name? Fifi.
Yeah.
We see Fifi. Oh my God. I'm going to write a letter to Rob Letterman and I'll be like, dude, you need to get the hell. Or if they somehow
find a way to bring Slappy into it again, like
we got Fifi in season 1.
Oh,
like the Fifi just shows up and does nothing.
Yeah. For like no reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Invasion of the Body Squeezers was in 2015 movie though, and they're nowhere in sight here, so that's also a little strange.
Yeah. It's very weird, the decision-making process on this show. I know these whenever they go up on stage to do interviews, they're like, we want to do this for the fans. We want to do this for the fans. And I'm not denying that they want to do it. I just don't think that they're looking in the right spot. I don't. I don't think low of people like that personally. But I think
they're doing good with like we brought up, they're doing good with like at least 2 of the books. Because like Stay Out of the Basement, I can tell that they're doing that for the fans because, like, I don't know how many of you guys out there listening to this podcast, like, if you've seen the first Creepshow movie, there's a segment with Stephen King called Jordy Verrell where he basically gets infected by alien plant life. There's so much body horror in that makes your skin crawl. And, like, when you watch this trailer, you get similar body horror to that. And that's what the original book had. Like, the original book is about body horror. The Dr. Brew does a lot of disgusting, nasty things that makes you kind of wince. And with monster blood,
food, like that.
Yeah, if they do that, I might vomit. Yo, that was some nasty stuff.
Cutting.
Honestly, it's like the plant food thing. It seems like they might be hinting to that in the trailer because there's a scene where he like fills a glass with water. He's putting something into his mouth and like drinking the water. So,
yeah, no, it definitely seems like that. All that they need to do is just really lean on the sort of you don't need to sacrifice like the scariness for it, but make it like just follow the tone of Goosebumps. Like that was our biggest complaint with the first season, was that it just felt like it lost the spirit of Goosebumps in its execution because it's trying to be more adult. It's trying to cater more to young adults and people who grew up with the original books. That's fine. Like you could totally do that, but don't lose the spirit of what make these books so enjoyable in the first place. That is the balance between horror and humor. That is, we always say this, Goosebumps is a balance between horror and humor for kids, but really for anyone. So when you lean too much on one side and you lose, in this case, you lose the sort of campy nature of these situations, it doesn't feel like Goosebumps anymore. It really does. Season 1 just felt like it was trying to copy the Stranger Things, or even like, as we were talking before we started recording, season 1 of Goosebumps seems a lot similar to Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie. You know, the ghost that's haunting a group of kids with these somewhat isolated incidents, but they're also like a little half-baked, in my opinion. I wasn't a huge fan of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the movie. I liked the individual story adaptations, but I didn't like the overall plot device. I thought it was messy. That's kind of what Goosebumps Season 1 is. Just done worse.
I did say for Season 1 that like it felt more like they should have just adapted Fear Street, because like when you're watching Season 1, it has so many Fear Street tropes that you almost think that they would want to do a Fear Street title. And I'm glad you brought up humor, because when I saw this Season 2 trailer, one of the big things that caught my eye was that it's a lot more campy and like corny humor. Like Dr. Brewer's doing dad jokes, and I'm like, that's not in season 1. Season 1 was going for edgy jokes. The humor in this one feels a lot more like what Goosebumps should be. And I don't know if anybody else caught this, but even in the promotional images, David Schwimmer looks like kind of like Justin Long, and his performance in this trailer is like a more intimidating Justin Long. Like he's got that awkwardness, but he also like creeps you out with how stern he is. He's just got more aura, as the kids say, more aura in this case.
And that's a shame too, because I feel Justin Long was
Dahmer vibes.
Exactly, it is very Dahmer-ish in his approach, and that's a shame because Justin Long, Justin Long was great in season 1. I'm not gonna sit here and dog on him because it's not true that he did a good job. He really did. But
honestly,
I thought
all the actors in that first season did a good job. It was just the writing, the story.
It was just the writing. It really was just the
They were
writing.
good actors. They were good actors who got dealt a shitty script.
Yeah. They were
Sometimes
good.
actors just get dealt shitty scripts, and that's all there really is to it. But more to the point, David Schwimmer, I look at him and I'm just like, he feels at home. Like he feels like, I was a little like confused at first. I'm like, well, how would David Schwimmer work for Goosebumps? I watch him in that trailer and I'm like, he works. Like he just I can't really explain what it is, but he has that feeling to him that he belongs in the Goosebumps universe. He's got the right amount of. I like that you brought up the dad jokes because it is funny. Like it's funny because it's awkward, but it's funny. Like they're trying to put humor into it, and even like when that one asshole kid breaks into the basement and he looks in the freezer and he's just like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding!" Like it's not a great joke, but they're trying. Like
him
they're
getting
trying
snatched
to
into
be
that freezer.
funny.
Him getting snatched in that freezer was such a good scene too. I was like, "Yeah, that's really cool to watch."
Yeah, I can't wait to see how that full scene plays out in that season.
Yeah,
because the good thing about having a guy like David Schwimmer too is that sometimes when you get actors that are from like a comedy background or different role, they could either phone it in or they could like put more effort to try to become more believable. And he took that route. Like I feel like he's taking it seriously. He's putting his heart in, and you can definitely tell when you're seeing him on screen.
Yeah, he seems like he's definitely taking the time to really like get into the role. And when you hear him in interviews, mainly the panel interview at NYCC, he does have a lot of faith in this, and he does take it seriously, which is important for any actor in any project, is that they go into it being like not looking at an easy paycheck. Like they look at it and be like, okay, I got to put my all into this. And I think he is, from what I've seen so far, putting his all into it. So that's what's most important. What do you guys think of the rest of the cast so far? The sort of main kids and the supporting characters so far?
I like them so far. I think that at least for sure, especially Devin and Cece, they feel way more grounded as main characters than the main characters in the first season. The first season, they just felt like, as I think Michael Goosebumps fan put it best, they feel like MCU actors where they're just we're given much of a script and they're just expected to quip for everything and make some kind of snarky little annoying remark every time and ad-lib a bunch of stuff, which just didn't work. Because it's like they were trying too hard to be funny, and it just didn't work. While these actors feel more serious, they feel more grounded, they feel more like real people in this kind of a scenario. They're like sitting down, they're trying to have serious conversations about, what's going on, things like that. We'll see how the side characters are. I think this, like, the one side character who gets snatched into the freezer, like, seems like he's going to be kind of an annoying character, but he seems that's just kind of the character he's meant to be, is kind of this douchey, annoying guy. So, like, if they do that well, it's part of his characterization, and that's better than what they did in season 1. We don't really know much about the other side characters to really say much about it yet, but I'm curious to see where they're going to go so far, because, again, they seem more grounded and serious than season 1.
That first season, it just has that whole Riverdale thing where it's like, you don't believe that they're actual teenagers. It's like caricatures of teenagers compared to here. I think the one good thing they did is like, we don't get too much crazy screen time with the kids. So they're not like being flamboyant. They're not being crazy. So it just feels like normal teens. And it's not a bad thing so far. We'll find out more about them later. So.
Yeah. Well, and credit where credit is due. So Sam McCarthy and Jane Bartels are playing the roles of the two main characters, Devin and Cece, the siblings. And they seem to be the main focus. And one thing I will say right now, I think is a great idea. In season one, you had this group of 5 teenagers. You had Margot, Isaiah, Isabella, James, and Lucas. It took me a minute to remember all 5 of them, but there's 5 characters. There's 5 characters that you're following. Now, for the purposes of the individual scenarios like Haunted Mask and Cuckoo Clock and Doom, it makes sense. You can't have one character going through the same things. But when you need to follow them through the overarching story too, you have 5 main characters, all with their own subplots going on, all over the course of the entire season. It just becomes frustrating to keep track of because, okay, you have Lucas dealing with just being him and his mother. There's the whole revelation that his dad died. I think that was the revelation, is that he died.
Yep.
So that sort of thing. You have Isabella. She's kind of going through her own thing. Like, she's really frustrated. That's what leads her to get the mask. You have the whole fucking love triangle. I hate love triangles. I hate love triangles. I hate them. Hate every
love triangles,
freaking
infidelity,
thing about love triangles, and
everything that screams Goosebumps.
Yeah, literally. When I think about Goosebumps, I think about love triangles.
Yo, that guidance counselor had the worst. That guidance counselor had the worst riz ever. That man was bombing every single.
Oh yeah, and if it wasn't bad enough, not one but 2 of them, 2 love triangles in the same fucking season. Regardless, you had all that going on. On top of that, you don't know who exactly is the main character, because it starts off with Isaiah. So you're like, okay, Isaiah must be the main character because he's the one we start out with. But no, then focus sort of shifts to Margot. Like, Margot's sort of like the main character because she's the one finding out all these pieces about the story. She's the one interacting with Harold the most. And that sort of thing. So you're like, okay, then I guess Margot's the main character. But then it's, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, it was hard to keep track of who to follow and who to root for because everyone was going through their own shit. And then you also had the parents, all the parents, 5 parents and 5 kids. That's 10 characters you're following. 10 fucking characters. Then you have Harold.
And don't forget, then you had the stuff in the past. Then so you had
exactly,
while they're still the parents, it's still a whole new set of actors and story that you have to now get through.
And while I did like Night of the Living Dummy 1,
yeah, then Justin Long.
While I did, yeah, and Justin Long and Harold as the villain, and then Slappy as the late, like, it was like he was late. It was like Slappy showed up late to the party. Like, that's what it literally felt like. And everybody knew that Slappy was going to be the big reveal. Everybody knew he was going to be the thing in the trunk. Why did we spend so much time getting to him? Like, this should have been a one and done thing. Open the trunk. Oh my God, it's a ventriloquist dummy. Who would have guessed? Everybody going into the show knew from the very first episode that Slappy was the main MacGuffin of it all. Everybody knew. Why did we waste so much time on it?
That's a good thing about season 2. They're not wasting any time. They're like, you guys know
they shouldn't, they shouldn't, because that's good storytelling. Good storytelling.
It's stay out of the basement. First thing you get is stay out of the basement.
Time. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And so you had all these characters to follow, 5 kids, 5 adults, and their story in the past, which took up most of the Slappy episodes because they had to explain all that. So you had all of that. It was a mess to follow. And then, so my point is, having just 2 main characters, 2 siblings, and their dad who's going through weird stuff. That's all you need to focus on. The side characters, they're there just to be that, side characters. They're there to fill out time in the roster and interact with all the devices, non-stay out of the basement shit. That's what they're there for. They do not need to be in the overarching story. That's all I'm saying.
Like that one girl in the subway station, she was just a monster blood victim. She was getting attacked by something in that train, so They just use her as a plot device.
Kill characters off. Kill them off. I don't care. That's like the horror is not always like everybody walks away and goes home happy. Like that's the thing about season 1 is just that it was dangerous, but there never felt like there was any stakes. You know what I mean? Like it never felt like these characters could die at any moment because you just knew that they were all, because you're following them all. Like everyone's going to come out okay. Even at the end of the show, Isaiah supposedly dies, but then he's brought back to life like in an instant. Made for a good cliffhanger or decent cliffhanger. But you know what I mean? It's just like, have the decency, have the balls to kill characters off, even if they're teenagers. That's the whole point of a slasher movie. That's what I thought they were going to do, and why they called the more adult Goosebumps. I thought, okay, well, maybe they'll just do, you know, like we saw with Say Cheese and Dice, like broken bone out of the body, or like, oh, so you get a little more grotesque stuff, you get a bit more I was actually kind of excited. Like, the very when I saw that, I was like, they're going to go episode darker. 10. I thought for sure that Pyre, of all those adults who are now like mind controlled, I was like, okay, they're all going to die. I was like, let's do this. Burn, baby, burn. No. It's like, okay. It was a vision.
You could have had a crescendo here to send off maybe this episode that had nothing to do with Horrorland to maybe, you know, give the audience something to talk about, but nope.
That's why people like the original Goosebumps series too, is because kids die. Like there are stakes even in the original Goosebumps books. And if you compare another kids horror titan like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Are You Afraid of the Dark has great episodes, but there's never any death. It always ends with a happy ending. It always ends with the kids coming. Goosebumps is not like that. Kids die off screen.
Kids will die.
Things happen all the time. So if you're making an adult
ripped to shreds by werewolves, that's what Goosebumps is.
If you were making an adult Goosebumps, it would be the same kills, except they would just be on screen this time. That's really the only thing you gotta do.
Yeah, and that is how you get around having such a large ensemble cast. I'm not saying that just because you have a large cast in a horror movie that they need to die. Like, I hate disposable characters, but throw some stakes in, for God's sake. Like, I don't know if it's a mandate by Disney. I don't know if it's a Sony thing. I don't know if it's just the writers being too scared to, you know, go that extra mile. But please, like, make the threats threatening. Make them threatening.
Game of Thrones.
That kid who gets pulled into the freezer in the trailer, he's dead. Like, kill him off. Please make these things terrifying.
And plus, every season is an anthology, so you have no reason to keep them alive. They're not going to come back.
Yeah.
Literally. Honestly, you could have killed that whole town off in season 1, and since it's an anthology now, it wouldn't have mattered because you're not following those characters anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it would have made for a horrifying ending. Like, isn't that the whole point of horror media, is to horrify you? Like, I don't know. It just seems like they're too scared to go the extra mile. The 90s series went the extra mile. To be frank, it never showed any blood, and it wasn't gratuitous. Like, kids weren't dying in every single episode. But when they did, it hit. When kids died, or they were left to, like, a bed, or even Haunting Hour. Like,
that's a big
Haunting Hour. Kids will die. Yeah. Kids will die in that show, and not just die horribly.
Pumpkinheads, Dead Body, all those.
Like hideous children. Mascot, yeah, that the kids literally digesting alive in Mascot is terrifying. Like, and these are kid shows. They're kids shows.
Why is this show? Episode is Scarecrow, because Scarecrow was the entire world got killed. Like, it was next level for kids horror.
Yeah. So, and again, that's kids horror for kids. So why is the adult horror show too scared to go the extra mile? So, super long tangent. I didn't mean to go on a big rant, but by all intents and purposes, I hope that in this season, like, number one, they balance the horror and the humor. Like, put some jokes in. Please, it's literally the whole point of Goosebumps is to make you laugh and scare you. That's the point. That's why kids get into it. And for God's sakes, please make the threats intimidating. Like, make it seem like there's literal stakes. Any of these characters could die at any moment. So, like, yeah, in the trailer where the girl is running away from the monster blood, like, make there be real stakes. Like, that sort of thing. Monster blood is terrifying. Like, it's essentially the Blob. And if you think about the Blob remake and what happens to people in that movie, like, apply that to Monster Blood, where it's not only sentient, but it can grow, like, at a whim. That's terrifying.
Cool thing about
there's also like a scene in the trailer, like you get like a brief glimpse of it, but like I can't tell who the character was. Like from some of the clips before, it almost looks like it might be Devin, but like he's like getting dragged into this like a manhole by this plant and these like sentient plants, and you see a quick flash of him like completely wrapped up in vines, and the vines like going down his throat and stuff. Like
the cool thing too is like even with the monster blood, I was gonna bring this up. Like there's a scene where I think one of the girls is like over the sink and it almost looks like she's having a nosebleed. And maybe that's what mutates into monster blood. Because the whole thing about monster blood is it's called monster blood, but there's no blood. It was a slime toy. They found it. They opened it up. Slime's not popular anymore. So they're making it darker if it is mutated blood. And you can tell that they're going into horror because this was some information we got as well. One of the episodes, I don't know if it's going to be a flashback part of the story or if it's going to be modern day, but there's going to be an episode shot in found footage style, which is going to be horrific. If they do it like VHS and like anthology, those movies, like the way those do it, it could be horrifying.
Especially if that one is Welcome to Camp Nightmare, that you have a great idea on your hands. Yeah. Like I'm telling you right now, writers, if you make a found footage version of Welcome to Camp Nightmare and you pull it off, I will love you forever. I will just say that honestly, right now.
Yeah, my theory for the found footage episode, I might as well get into this theory. So when looking at the cast list on IMDb and on the Goosebumps wiki, one of the characters is named Hannah, and the actress is credited as being in one episode. So what if The Ghost Next Door is the found footage episode? Because it looks like Hannah might be one of the kids who goes missing. So what if basically my idea is maybe like this Hannah character lives next door to Dr. Brewer, and she ends up overhearing Devin and Cece talking about whatever happened back in the 90s, these kids going missing. And so she invites them over to show them this footage that she could claim that she found. She maybe look over some footage that she claims that she like found in this bunker. Maybe she's saying, she's like, oh, I went exploring in this bunker and I found this camera with some footage. I'll show you guys this. And she shows them the footage. And it's basically like, yeah, the ghost next, like they saw all the stuff that happened in the bunker. And at the end, it's revealed, so like she turns the camera around and Hannah reveals her face in the camera. And it's revealed that she's a ghost or something like that.
I was going to say that too, because I remember when I saw the trailer, there's this one shot of this old woman that was like I don't know if you guys have seen like It Chapter 2 or The Visit, like this crazy looking old woman. And I was like, you know what, they could do that where like, let's say, with the Vanishing, maybe one of the kids died or they reappear and maybe that's the ghost next door. Because that's really the only logical way you could even include the haunted car in Ghost Next Door is if there's an actual death. Because if there's a ghost coming back to haunt and be vengeful, that's really the only way you can include it in a sci-fi based story.
Well, and a point that you made earlier, the fact that it's different from season one in that these characters in season one, it was a bunch of characters that accidentally killed one person. Here, it's a group of kids that went missing. And if it's, they all met the same fate as Anthony's brother and that he died, like that alone is a very creepy concept because you need to find out like, well, what happened to them? That's way more interesting than like finding out why a bunch of people accidentally killed somebody. Like in my personal opinion, I wasn't really interested that much in that aspect of season one, but like here I'm like, what did lead to these kids going missing and subsequently dying? Like, is it related to the plants? Is it related to like some other sort of supernatural thing? You don't know, but like it just seems like the full picture so far from what we've seen, and obviously things can shake out differently. our point is this is a good trailer. Like this is a really good trailer. Whoever's doing the editing over there at Sony HQ, like, kudos to you. You made this look really, really good. Only time will tell if it leads up to the hype. But where I stand,
we also have to give a shout out to the person who dropped the trailer. They dropped it public this time, unlike the season 1 trailer that was unlisted for like 2 weeks. That people only found through a link, and then it publicly dropped. Like, come on, man.
Well, I think what happened was that it got publicly dropped early and by mistake, and then they unlisted it. But by then, everybody had the link already. So it was way too late, and it was because I think they were waiting for. Was it New York Comic Con? I don't even remember what they were waiting for, but it was something. So it was a mistake. I remember that people were like, "Where'd it go?" And I'm like, "Oh, somebody must have gotten fired."
But also, like, another thought I had for like ideas for how they could adapt books is like for Welcome to Camp Nightmare, since in the book the camp is like a military training site. What if this military bunker is at the camp? Maybe like the kids who went missing were at like a summer camp, and they ended up while they're off exploring, they find this bunker while at camp, and they go down to explore, and that's when they go missing for some reason.
So, one trailer out, a lot of stuff in that trailer, so we'll be definitely keeping our eyes out for more footage. So in terms of the release date, it is not coming out, obviously, by this point it's already obvious, not coming out in October like season 1. Season 1 premiered on, I believe, Friday the 13th of October last year, so it was like perfect timing. And then first 5 episodes dropped, and then every subsequent one the weeks after. And this time it is coming out in January, which is odd, but to be fair, they did confirm the season was in production in February, so it makes sense that it wouldn't be done in time for October unless it was going to be really, really rushed. What do you guys?
Which I'm glad they didn't rush. Because
please don't rush this. Please take your goddamn time and think this through. Like, we're hard on you guys because we want to love this show. We want to, okay? We don't want the show to be bad. We want it to be great. We want it to be like the best thing from Goosebumps in years. Please take your time. But what do you guys think about the release date? Do you think it's a good time for something like this to come out?
I mean, I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything that bad about it. I know there are some people who are complaining that that's not releasing in October. I don't think they realized that it just got announced in February, but like, I'm fine with it being January. I know, like horror, like, there's movies in general or shows that release in January have a stigma of being bad. So I think, I mean, obviously that's just a myth, but still. So I'm here to see why they chose that date, but
I'm fine with January as well, because like even with like something like Creepshow season 5, it still has not been announced yet because they had big pushbacks with the writer's strike. So stuff got basically posted up a while back. So although it's not an optimal date, I much prefer that they take their time. I'd much rather them try to release it the full way it should be than release it on like October the 13th, but it's only like 70% done. That's not good.
Yeah.
And then try to finish the other episodes before the season's over.
Yeah.
To have the story or visual shots or something look like complete trash. Yeah, no, I'd rather have a wait. That's the thing too. And really, that's one of the great things about horror. There's while yes, October is optimal for a lot of horror, honestly, it's year round. You can do Halloween. That's a thing. So you have horror at Valentine's.
Do Halloween on St. Patrick's Day.
Leprechaun. So, there's horror throughout the entire year. It is not exclusive just to October, but obviously it's just when people like me go a little more loco.
Yeah.
So
plus October, it's very saturated with movies and content because it's very competitive during that time. Compared to during January, the show's probably going to shine better because there's not going to be that big competitive market during that time.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If it would have released this October, now granted the MCU's having a little bit of trouble, but I haven't watched it yet, but that Agatha All Along show I've heard has done well. There was a few other things, like the Hocus Pocus announcement for Hocus Pocus 3, and there's a lot of things that could take away.
Beetlejuice
like
as well.
It's very saturated. Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm okay with it. There's not a whole bunch coming out in January that I can recall at the moment. I'm sure there might be a couple things, but nothing like October.
Well, then we can.
He said it's just very oversaturated.
Then we can have January, and all the talk will be on Goosebumps. Then, so I'm down for it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, as we stand on season 2, there's still plenty of time to go. We figured we would give our sort of first thoughts on everything that's come out so far, the trailer especially, and our thoughts for the upcoming season, which is looking to be very interesting at the very least. Whether or not you're excited or you're not excited, I personally wouldn't be surprised if you're not super excited, especially if you didn't like season 1. But for me personally, I'm walking away from that new trailer pretty optimistic, cautiously optimistic, but optimistic, because I really want the show to turn out something really, really good, something I really look forward to, and I feel like they are on the right track. I don't know how it's going to turn out in the end, but I feel like they're in a better spot now than they were last year, and I'm very intrigued to see what they deliver for that.
And also, one more interjection to say here. Another thing that gives me hope is that the head writer of this season is the person who wrote Go Eat Worms in season 1.
Mm-hmm. And that was definitely the campiest, most Goosebumps in spirit episode. So if they can apply that to the full season, I think we might be in good hands. Here's hoping, at least.
Yep.
So, but only time will tell, and we'll be sure to bring you guys our thoughts as more information comes out. But that is going to do it for tonight's episode of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. I want to sincerely thank Micah and Harlander for joining us for this discussion. It was great to have you guys here, and we're excited to have you guys back on some other time in the future.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Maybe a season 2 retrospective once it's released.
Yes. We'll make sure
if
to
it
bring
turns
you guys
out
back.
being bad, though, don't invite me back. Just invite Micah. I can't show my face.
You can see if we actually are happy with the results or if we're going to eat our words.
Yep. Exactly. Well, I'm sure if it's bad, we're going to probably hear about the episode pretty soon. So hopefully that's another reason to have your fingers crossed. But no, it's absolutely awesome to have you guys. Thanks for joining. And if you guys, again, want to go see what they're up to, go check out GooseJunkies over on Goosebumps Completionist channel. That podcast deserves a lot of support as well. So go check them out. And you can follow them over on their YouTubes and social medias as well. Ultimate Goosebumps Man and Horrorlander. Check them out. All those links will be in the description below. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Odyssey Fan and Sean respectively. Those links are in the description below as well. If you liked today's episode, make sure you like and comment, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on our audio platforms and social medias. Here's to another year of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As Bjorn would probably say, let's keep goose bumping. So make sure you guys subscribe and follow on our social medias. All those links are in the description below. We'll have a brand new episode for you guys next week, but until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, and from all of us here, we want to wish you all, as always, to take care, stay safe, and have a very scary day.